Hello again. My name is Shalaf Pal, and previously I posted or I published a video about the 125cc single cylinder Suzuki motorcycles which came into the India in the year 2006, and we had a brief discussion about its downfall and upbringing of its 125cc. We talked a bit about that motorcycle, and today in my discussion, I would be focusing on the 150cc segment of Suzuki Motorcycle India. Again, we will talk its downfall and upbringing of Suzuki motorcycle in case of 150cc singles. But before that, I think we should go into a brief history lesson. Back in the year 2000, when at that point of time, TVS and Suzuki both were partners, and they just rocked the whole Indian motorcycle market with their two-stroke engines. You just name them. They were Max 100, Samurai, Shogun. Shogun was especially targeted for the Yamaha's RX 100 competitor. Shaolin was a 132cc two-stroke, and I think that was the first motorcycle with gear shift indicators. But I'm digressing the topic now. We shall be now discussing the brief history of 125cc single cylinder motorcycle from Suzuki. The year 2000 was special because Suzuki, with its partner TVS, they brought up the first ever Suzuki four stroke motorcycle as well as a 150cc displacement motorcycle, first time into the Indian market. And that motorcycle was called the TVS Suzuki Fiero. Now, as we all know, many of us have seen that bike with first in class back in the day, having all integrated lamps. There were no turn signals hanging either side of the motorcycle, and a very quirky looking speedometer console. But so far as the dimensions and other parts of the motorcycles are concerned, they were more or less like a Splendor. A very short, stubby bike with a very high performing engine. But the thing is, if you look at the specification of that motorcycle back in the day, of course, it had a 149cc cubic centimeter capacity with single overhead cam, and it was producing about 12 brake horsepower at I think 7,000 rpm and 13 nm of torque. Which, if you say in at that point of time also, it was more of like people were thinking it's very underpowered so far as 150cc is concerned. Because back in the day, Honda came up with CBZ or Hero Honda CBZ, which was very much boasted by very famous Hrithik Roshan on the bike. All girls were getting crazy around the poster, what I'm talking about. But that motorcycle was also producing the same horsepower, 12 bhp. If many people they don't know about it. Also, Bajaj came up with its Pulsar range of motorcycles from 150cc to 180cc of range, and both the motorcycles were well equipped with disc brakes and electric starter as option. Suzuki Fero didn't had any thing either one of them, nor having a disc brake nor having a electric starter. But what Suzuki made, or TVS Suzuki altogether made a good decision, is that they, at the right point, at the right time, they launched their 150cc segment called the Fiero. Now, truth to be told, Fiero is such a motorcycle. Perhaps it was the only motorcycle which can clock to its last speed dialed in the speedometer. We all know many of the motorcycles here in India, they show 140 kilometers per hour speed in the speedometer, but actually they just go up to 100 or 120. But Suzuki Fiero was a real bike which in some cases it went over 140. It had that power, it had that power. There is no denial of that. So after a great success of TVS Suzuki Fiero, that specific model was deliberately made into production till 2004, I guess. And in the year 2005, they had already came up with the Fiero F2 and the Fiero FX, which was completely a TVS product. It has nothing to do with Suzuki. The TVS Fiero FX and F2 were just uh, designed or refleshed product of Suzuki Fiero. As Suzuki Fiero, as I already said, that the dimensions were more of like Hero Honda Splendor. It was a very short bike. So for tall people and for bulkier people, it was very uncomfortable on the saddle to actually go for long distance rides. But the engine was more dependable and high performing. So TVS they just redesigned the motorcycle. They hyped up the dimensions of the bike, and later on it sold quite a bit. And in the year of 2005, they came up with the TVS Apache 150. And yeah, that was the end of the Suzuki lineup of motorcycle, in my point of view. We will talk about the series of TVS Apaches later on, but as we are talking about Suzuki's history of 150cc segment. So, frankly speaking, the 150cc segment it just went from 2000 to 2004. And as we all know, and I have already said in my previous video, that there was some sort of a legal decision or an agreement which made Suzuki not to enter the Indian market after the partition of two companies as partners for the next 3 years. So they couldn't brought up with 150cc segment in an early stage. So fast forwarding to the year 2008, and to be very precise, in the winters of 2008, they came up with the product called the GS 150R, and that motorcycle being purely designed by the Suzuki's subsidiary in India. Suzuki thought it could be a good befitting answer to the already established Honda Unicorn, well popular Bajaj Pulsar, or the newcomer from the Yamaha. If you remember, Yamaha also brought up its R15 as well as FZ16 in the winters of 2008. So Suzuki brought up that motorcycle in a way which is, in my point of view, the same happened with GS 150R as what it happened with Suzuki Heat as well as Suzuki ZS. Suzuki entered the 150cc market again very late. If you have, if I already said in my last video that they entered late in 125cc market as well as in 150cc market they entered very late. So yeah, it was like they designed the motorcycle in a way which is somehow very traditional looking. And traditional looking, I don't mean that like it's more of like having a circular headlamp or a classic design or a retro design for that sake. But it actually came up in an era where people were in dire need of getting something different in motorcycle design and overall vehicular package which is involved in production of a motorcycle. Digital instrumentation, rear LED lamps, integrated lamps, cast aluminum wheels, disc brake not being an optional accessory anymore. Disc brake and electric start, I would say, now at the point of time, it's a standard equipment. It has to be there in a 150cc bike. But people were somehow considering to buy a motorcycle which should not be more of like an economical point of view, but in design point of view, it should be different. It should be masculine. It should look like something which has been brought up by a foreign company or especially a Japanese motorcycle brand. It should be performing very well uh, and things like that. So my point of telling is when, as I said, in the winters of 2008, when Yamaha came with its triple macho design in case of FZ16, and when they brought up the very first R15 in India, before that I don't think people have ever saw that a 150cc bike can be made with full fairing, with a leaning sitting position, as well as with a high performing and high revving 4-stroke 149cc engine. Because truth to be spoken, 150cc engine is a very small engine so far as a big performance package is concerned. So Suzuki introduced GS 150R with a very traditional design. I would say the motorcycle had a single down tube frame where engine acts like a stress member with a very chunky masculine fuel tank, headlamp having a bikini cowl, rear bloated cowlings, and the rear tail lamp is more or less inspired from its bigger siblings like the GSX 1000R. The instrument panel, by the way, is very exhaustive, had very big dials. It was an analog digital instrumentation with a very big tachometer as well as the digital display showing trip A, trip B, odometer, speed very well. And it has a feature called the engine RPM indicator. So what you need to do is you need to set your engine RPM range and it will indicate a white light which stays beside the tachometer to engage that at which speed limit of your engine is running on. It had all the features, no way, there is no doubt in that. But again, with the design language they brought in was very traditional, and people were very much skeptical about its looks. As an example, if you look at the headlamp of Suzuki GS 150R, the first when it came into the market, so at an instance you would feel that as if the headlamp's design has been uh, theft off from a Bajaj Pulsar, or the side stay for the rear foot peg has been borrowed from the Honda Unicorn. The stubby exhaust pipe is again a redesigned CBZ Extremes exhaust pipe. So people were again, the motorcycle when it first came to the market, people already started criticizing the design of the motorcycle among other players in the market. So my crux of saying is the moment GS 150R entered into the market, that design style, that design language, the overall appearance of the motorcycle, and the time when it was launched. Again, it was a wrong timing and a wrong decision by the management to bring up a very sober looking, a bit of conservative looking motorcycle in the Indian market. Because at the point of time, uh, the recession was about to over and people were climbing up. People were gradually having money to buy good motorcycles. And as Yamaha came up with good products, so no one was actually about to buy a Suzuki having such a sober look. And not only that, Suzuki GS 150R came up with a six gear transmission, which is a very unheard of because Suzuki GS 150R, if you look at the specifications, it was just producing 13.8 bhp. Still, being a two valve engine, it was producing a lot of power if you compare it with Pulsar or Extreme or Honda Unicorn. But with a six gear, which is, in my point of view, is unnecessary. Suzuki somehow determined GS150R as a commuter motorcycle. Commuter in the sense commuter added tourer bike. Because the stance of sitting on the GS150R is much of in a very higher position. You sit on GS150R in a very relaxed way. The handlebars are a bit raised. You don't have to put your knees so down or so folded that you get a fatigue after riding that bike, which you often realize if you ride in a very super sport motorcycle, where you have to be sitting in a very compromising position in order to get into that aerodynamic frame. As well as with that six gear transmission, it actually worked like an overdrive gearbox in automatic cars. In case where your engine is running very low, your engine RPM is very low, but at the same time, due to overdrive, the car or the vehicle maintains its highest speed possible on the highway. So basically, the Suzuki GS 150R's gearbox, especially the sixth gear, works in that same way. But again, by putting up six gears in such a small engine, adds some basic problems. The problems were like, in many ways, the gears, the gear ratio were spaced much later. I mean, if you are achieving good pulling power in the first gear, you won't be getting that same amount of torque in the second gear. As well as if you are getting a punch in third gear, you won't be getting that same amount of punch in fourth or fifth gear. And for that, you need to rev the motorcycle a bit higher, which is somehow is possible if you are having a daily highway ride, but that is not possible in a case if you are riding your bike on a daily basis in crowded streets or in the environment where we generally live in crowded cities. So more or less six gear in GS150R never made that purpose solved in that case. Again, if I talk about the sitting position of Suzuki GS150R, the saddle of the motorcycle is bit higher. So in a way, if you are a short rider, or let's say if you have a height of 5'8" or 5'7", it becomes quite trickier to swing your leg over the bike, and most probably you have to stand on your toes in order to put your bike uh, on a traffic signal or somewhere like that. So yes, somehow this position, or should I say the sitting height of GS 150R was more intimidating in that respect. So in that way, Suzuki GS 150R is a very good motorcycle, no doubt. But because of its wrong timing, because of its some technical disabilities, I would say, or the overall design language of the bike, which is more or less very sober, very conservative, not that up to date. Something like that motorcycle belongs to the late 2000s. It's not the present motorcycle. But glad that motorcycle stayed long from 2008 uh, till 2016, basically when BS4 emission norms kicked in. and with an additional surge of surge of sales in GS 150R because Suzuki realized and perhaps they brought in the Gixxer 155 in 2014, I believe. So GS 150R was not playing that well back in the day. But again, that same problem with Suzuki when actually it played a big role in marketing in the year 2012 and in the year 2013 when people came to know that it's a good bike and people when they really started buying that motorcycle at the point of time Suzuki brought up its Gixxer 155, which is a good motorcycle. It is as same as Yamaha's FZ, short, stubby, quick, and I would say it's a pocket rocket in many ways. Performance wise, it's very good. It has a 5 speed, but yes, so far as pickup and acceleration is concerned, it's it's a bit good than GS 150R, as it is evident in that way. So that is how we came to the conclusion that how Suzuki GS 150R entered into the market, how people got the taste of that bike, and I would say yes, it is again a very sad demise of another great product from Suzuki 150cc singles. So yes, that is all about the Suzuki's 150cc market. And I would say again, GS 150R is still in production. It is being exported to countries like Brazil, African countries, where in those countries, I guess these motorcycles are being used as motorcycle taxis in a way because after all, these motorcycles are very comfortable. Even the pillion seat is equally comfortable as the riding seat. So yes, it is being still in production, but obviously it is not made for the domestic market. So that is all about my take on Suzuki GS 150R and the overall 150cc segment of Suzuki India Private Limited. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.